Awaken your spirit-chosen ones. Some people don't avoid you because they forgot what they did. They avoid you because they remember it too clearly. Sit with that for a second, because this isn't one of those dramatic, overhyped stories where someone plays the victim and blames the world for everything that went wrong. This is colder than that, cleaner than that. This is about a truth most people never say out loud. Not everyone who hurt you moved on. Some of them are low-key terrified. Terrified of you. Not because you're louder, not because you're stronger, not because you glowed up and started posting wins online. They're scared because you survived the mess they personally created. And now you're walking around like living proof that their sabotage didn't work. And that kind of proof makes people deeply uncomfortable. Psychologists actually note something interesting about human behavior. When people cause serious harm to someone and that person later thrives, the aggressor often feels more stress than the victim. Not less, more. Because success erases their excuses. If you had collapsed, they could say, "See, they were weak anyway." If you had turned bitter, they could say, "See, they were always toxic." But you didn't cooperate with the story they wrote for you. You didn't fall apart permanently. You didn't become the villain. You didn't disappear. You rebuilt quietly, which means now they're stuck with a very awkward realization. They threw everything at you, and you're still here, functioning like a plot twist they didn't plan for. That's unsettling. It's like someone setting fire to a house and then driving by months later only to see a brand new building standing there with better paint and stronger walls. At some point they're like, "Wait, how are the lights on?" Because destruction was supposed to be permanent, but you treated it like renovation. And here's where it gets almost funny, in a dark, ironic way. The same people who tried to stress you out, they're now the ones checking your life updates like undercover detectives. The same ones who said you wouldn't make it, they're suddenly very quiet when your name comes up. The same ones who acted bold back then. Now they avoid eye contact, like you're about to present a PowerPoint titled Receipts. Nobody runs faster than a person who knows you remember everything, and that's what this story really is. Not revenge, not fantasy justice, not haters gonna hate. It's something far more psychological. It's about what happens when the people who engineered chaos realize they didn't break you. They accidentally forged you into someone sharper, calmer, harder to manipulate, and impossible to erase. Because now, every time they see you standing steady, they don't see your pain, they see their failure. And trust me, nothing shakes a person more than coming face to face with the consequences of their own actions. Wearing your face, walking confidently, and minding its business like, "Oh hey, still alive." That's the kind of presence that keeps people up at night. And today, we're breaking down exactly why. Number one, they didn't expect you to survive what they engineered to break you. Here's the part they will never admit out loud. What happened to you wasn't random. It wasn't life just being hard. It wasn't bad luck stacking up. A lot of it was intentional, calculated, quiet. People really do sit back and design downfalls for others. Not always in some dramatic movie villain way, but in subtle everyday cruelty. They withhold opportunities. They spread small lies that grow legs. They twist stories. They isolate you socially. They make you look unstable. They smile in your face while quietly pulling support from under your feet. Death by 1,000 paper cuts, slow enough that nobody else notices, but sharp enough that you feel every slice. And the wild part, they genuinely thought that would finish you. In their mind, you were supposed to fold, disappear, start doubting yourself, maybe even self-destruct a little, because that's what usually happens. Most people break under sustained pressure. Most people shrink when the room turns against them. They were betting on statistics, but you didn't follow the script. Instead of collapsing, you adapted. Instead of begging, you learned. Instead of chasing them for answers, you built your own. Every hit they threw forced you to grow new muscles. You became more observant, more independent, less naive, harder to manipulate. You didn't just survive, you upgraded. And now they're stuck with a reality they never prepared for. Because it's one thing to hurt someone. It's another thing to watch that same person walk past you stronger, calmer, and unbothered like none of it worked. That messes with people's heads. They look at you and think, how are they not destroyed? Because if you're still standing, then all that effort they put into tearing you down becomes embarrassing. All that scheming, all that gossip, all that negativity, wasted. You didn't become their victim story. You became their failed attempt. And nothing scares a manipator more than realizing the person they tried to break is now the one they can't shake. Your survival isn't just strength. To them, it's proof they lost. Number 2, your calm exposes how dirty they had to get. What really unsettles them isn't your success or your glow-up or any outside achievement. It's your composure. It's the way you move through life without chaos dripping off you. Because they remember exactly how they played the game. They remember the shortcuts, the lies they told with a straight face, the stories they twisted, the private conversations where your name got dragged through the mud just to make themselves look better. They remember the manipulation, the setups, the fake concern, the quiet sabotage. They know how low they had to go. And then they look at you. You're not scrambling. You're not plotting revenge. You're not gossiping about them to anyone who will listen. You're not acting bitter or desperate to clear your name. You're just steady, normal, focused, calm. That calm hits harder than any insult ever could, because it creates a contrast they can't escape. When someone fights dirty, they expect you to get dirty too. That's how they justify themselves. It helps them say, see, we're all the same. But you didn't give them that comfort. You didn't roll around in the mud with them. You didn't match their pettiness. So now there's no both sides story. There's just them. And then there's you. And the difference is obvious. Your peace becomes evidence. Not loud evidence, not dramatic evidence, just quiet, undeniable proof that you didn't have to cheat, lie, or destroy anyone to stand where you stand. That eats at people, because deep down they know they couldn't have done what you did your way. They don't have that discipline. They don't have that self-control. They don't have that level of character. So instead of feeling proud of themselves, they feel exposed, like their moral resume just got compared to yours without warning. And they lost badly. You didn't even have to call them out. Your behavior did it for you. Every calm response, every mature decision, every moment you chose growth over drama, it silently highlights how reckless and messy they were. And nothing makes a person more uncomfortable than realizing the person they tried to ruin ended up carrying themselves with more dignity than they ever could. Number 3, they thought trauma would make you smaller, but it made you sharper. The chaos they threw at you wasn't just meant to hurt you, it was meant to shrink you. They expected it to make you less confident, less capable, less visible. They wanted you to stumble, to second-guess yourself, to rely on them for answers, validation, or guidance. That's the way most manipulators operate. They think pain will make people pliable, easier to control. But you didn't cooperate. Instead of letting their chaos define you, it refined you. Every betrayal became a lesson. Every manipulation, a red flag you learned to spot a mile away. Every lie they spun made you question less and observe more. You started noticing patterns in behavior, timing, and intentions that others would miss entirely. Trauma didn't weaken you, it sharpened your instincts. They didn't anticipate that growth from suffering. They thought you'd be reactive, emotional, predictable, Instead, you became strategic. You learned to anticipate, to move with foresight. You became harder to fool, harder to trap, harder to provoke. The same weapons they used against you now bounce off with no effect because you learned how they operate and you stopped giving them leverage. And that's what terrifies them. They invested so much effort in breaking you, in making you dependent, in turning you into someone who would question themselves constantly. And instead, all that trauma acted like a forge, making you stronger, smarter, and more self-reliant. What they saw as a weakness became your advantage. They're watching someone they thought would be fragile turn into someone untouchable. That's a punch to the ego they didn't see coming. Because they assumed that suffering would create cracks, and instead, it created armor. Every lesson, every adjustment, every silent observation was another layer of protection they couldn't pierce. The irony is brutal. They tried to produce a victim, and instead they created someone who understands people better, moves more deliberately, and survives more powerfully. Trauma didn't make you small, it made you precise, and that precision leaves them unsettled, powerless, and quietly terrified of the person you've become. Number 4, they can't rewrite history because you remember too clearly. A lot of people don't survive off truth. They survive off edited versions of it. They retell stories in ways that protect their image. They soften what they did. They change the order of events. They swap roles until they look like the reasonable one and you look dramatic or unstable. That's how they sleep at night. Because if they had to face what really happened, exactly as it happened, they'd have to admit they were cruel on purpose. So they rely on one thing, your confusion. They hope time blurs your memory. They hope pain scrambles the details. They hope you start saying things like, maybe it wasn't that bad, or maybe I misunderstood. That's their escape route. But you didn't forget. That's the problem. You remember conversations word for word. You remember the tone, the timing. Who was there? What was promised? What changed? You remember the day they switched up on you for no reason. You remember the fake smiles, the backhanded comments, the exact moment you realized something wasn't right. Your memory stayed sharp, and now they're stuck, because they can't gaslight someone who kept receipts in their mind. When they try to twist the story, you don't get emotional or confused. You calmly say, no, that's not what happened. And you say it with specifics. Details make liars nervous. Vague people can be dismissed. Precise people cannot. You're precise. So every time they attempt to rewrite the past, you quietly correct it without hesitation. That's terrifying for someone who built their life on narrative control. Because now they can't reshape reality to make themselves look innocent. You're walking around with the original version of events stored perfectly. No edits, no distortion, just facts. And the presence of someone who remembers clearly feels like a threat to anyone who behaved badly, not because you're attacking them, but because you can't be fooled. They lost their favorite weapon, confusion. Now all they're left with is the truth, and the truth doesn't bend for anyone. Number 5, you became independent in ways they can never be. They thought isolating you would weaken you. That was the plan. Cut off your support, remove the helpers, make you feel alone enough that you'd crawl back, apologize for things you didn't even do, and depend on them just to survive. Because dependency is power. If you need someone emotionally, financially, socially, they own a piece of your decisions. They can pull strings. They can threaten to withdraw. They can control your behavior without ever raising their voice. That's the game they understand. So when they pushed you out or quietly excluded you, they assumed you'd panic. Most people do. Most people scramble when the safety net disappears. But something unexpected happened. Instead of chasing people, you learned how to stand without them. You figured things out alone. You handled your own problems. You stopped waiting for permission, validation, or rescue. You learned how to make money without relying on favors, how to make decisions without needing approval, how to self-soothe without running to someone every time life hurt. That kind of independence isn't motivational poster stuff. It's gritty. It comes from nights nobody checks on you, from solving problems with no backup, from realizing, if I don't do this myself, nobody will. It's built under pressure, and once it's built, it doesn't go away. Now here's the part that bothers them. They still can't function like that. They still need a crowd, still need allies, still need gossip circles and constant reassurance. Their confidence depends on who's clapping for them. Yours doesn't. You could lose everyone tomorrow and still be okay. They couldn't. That difference is huge. Because a person who doesn't need you cannot be controlled by you. There's no leverage, no emotional chokehold, no "after everything I did for you" speech that works anymore. You quietly removed yourself from their system, and people who rely on control feel useless around someone self-sufficient. You're not independent to impress anyone. You're independent because you had no choice, and that's what makes it real. They tried to leave you stranded. Instead, you learned how to build your own road. Number 6, they secretly study you now. What's happening behind the scenes is far more unsettling than anything they ever said to your face. After all the chaos they caused, after every lie, every betrayal, every manipulation, they didn't just walk away. They didn't just shrug and move on. No, they're watching, quietly, carefully, constantly. They check your updates online without commenting. They ask mutual friends about you, casually, pretending nothing matters. They observe without participating, analyzing without admitting it. It's not admiration. They're not impressed. They're confused. They're trying to figure out how someone they tried so hard to break not only survived, but is thriving. They're doing reconnaissance because your progress challenges everything they believed about control. They thought they had all the cards. They thought you were predictable. They assumed pain and chaos would leave you scrambling, dependent, unsure. Instead, you're calm, composed, and building momentum. That's something they can't understand, and that lack of understanding terrifies them. Every step you take, every success you quietly claim, is dissected in their minds. They notice the new habits, the new confidence, the way you navigate life without falling for the same traps. They notice how unaffected you are by their past interference, and it gnaws at them. They replay moments of their own manipulation and wonder where it went wrong, what they missed, and why nothing works on you anymore. The irony is brutal. While they intended to study, to control, to anticipate, it's actually you who learned the pattern. You see them coming before they act, you understand their strategies, and you've already built walls they can't breach. Meanwhile, they are stuck obsessing over your moves, powerless to influence them, forced into silent surveillance. They can't attack what they can't predict. They can't manipulate what no longer responds to their chaos. And that's the terrifying reality for them. Every glance, every check, every whispered inquiry is a reminder that the person they tried to destroy has become untouchable, invisible to their control, and fully alive on their own terms. Number 7, your existence triggers their conscience. They don't talk about this part because it makes them uncomfortable, but your presence alone forces them to face something they spend most of their life trying to avoid, themselves. Most people can live with doing wrong as long as the evidence disappears. If the person they hurt collapses, moves away, or fades out of sight, it's easy to pretend nothing really happened, out of sight, out of mind. They tell themselves little lies like, "It wasn't that serious," or "They'll get over it," or "Everybody goes through stuff." That's how they protect their ego. But you didn't disappear. You didn't fall apart permanently. You didn't become some tragic story they could pity and forget. You kept living, you kept growing, you kept showing up. And that's the problem, because every time they see you, it quietly reminds them, I did something wrong to this person. Not in a dramatic courtroom kind of way, in a subtle, nagging, late-at-night kind of way. The kind that creeps into their thoughts when things get quiet. Your face becomes a mirror. And mirrors are dangerous for people who don't like what they've done, because now they can't rewrite the story where they're the hero. If you had turned bitter, cruel, or toxic, they could blame you and feel justified. They could say, see, they were the problem. But you didn't give them that escape. You stayed decent. You stayed grounded. You didn't turn into the monster they tried to paint you as. So now they're stuck with a harsher truth. They hurt someone who didn't deserve it. And that realization stings more than they expected. It's easier to hate someone than to feel guilty about them. But you didn't give them a reason to hate you. So guilt is all they have left. That's why they avoid you. Not because you're intimidating, not because you're loud, but because your quiet, steady existence forces them to confront the one person they can't run from, their own conscience. And most people would rather disappear than sit with that kind of truth. Number 8, they're scared you'll tell the truth calmly, not emotionally. What terrifies them more than anything isn't shouting, tears, or explosive reactions. Anger and drama are easy to dismiss. Most manipulators are built to survive conflict because it's loud, chaotic, and predictable. They can argue back, twist words, gaslight, or even pretend they don't care. But calm truth? That's a different kind of weapon. When you speak calmly, without emotion clouding your words, everything becomes undeniable. Every detail, every moment, every manipulation you endured is stated clearly, chronologically, precisely. No exaggeration, no dramatic flair, just facts. And facts are uncomfortable. Facts are sharp. Facts expose patterns. Facts leave no room for excuses. They know this. Deep down, they feel it. That's why they avoid you. Because if the day comes when you calmly lay out everything that happened, it won't be a spectacle. It won't be a performance. It will be evidence. Evidence that they can't refute, that no one can dismiss, that can't be twisted into your fault anymore. They fear the precision of your memory, the clarity of your logic, and the quiet authority in your voice. They remember all the corners they cut, all the lies they told, all the manipulation they counted on. And they know that once you speak, every one of those corners will be spotlighted, every lie catalogued, every manipulation exposed, not angrily, not emotionally, just undeniably. Calm truth doesn't need to attack. It doesn't need theatrics. It doesn't need revenge. It cuts through their defenses because it's impossible to argue with. It's not dramatic, it's factual. And manipulators hate that because their whole existence relies on confusion, doubt, and control. That's why they're already nervous about you, even if you never say a word. Because somewhere in their mind, they know that when you decide to speak, the truth will land like a hammer, silent, precise, and irreversible. They can't charm, gaslight, or manipulate it away. And that is the scariest thing for someone who built chaos and thrived on deception. The calm, undeniable clarity of the person they tried to destroy. Number 9, you stopped chasing closure, which means they lost leverage. For a long time, they counted on one thing, your need for answers. They expected you to come back asking, why did you do this? They expected long texts, emotional conversations, late-night explanations, and attempts to fix what they broke. Because as long as you were searching for closure, you were still tied to them, still hooked, still reachable. And reachable people can be controlled. That's how leverage works. If you need something from someone, an apology, validation, honesty, clarity, they hold the power. They can delay it, deny it, use it like bait. They can pull you closer whenever they want just by dangling the possibility of talking things out. They live off that. It makes them feel important, relevant, in control. So they fully expected you to keep knocking on a door they slammed in your face. But you did something they didn't prepare for. You stopped asking. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped trying to make them understand your side. You stopped needing their apology to move forward. You gave yourself closure, quietly, internally, without their permission. And that shift changed everything, because now they can't lure you back with fake peace offerings. They can't manipulate you with half-hearted apologies. They can't say, "Let's talk," and expect you to come running. There's nothing to negotiate anymore. You're already gone, emotionally checked out. And that messes with their head more than anger ever could. They were ready for tears. They were ready for arguments. They were ready for you to fight for the connection. They weren't ready for indifference. Because indifference means they no longer have a grip on you. No strings to pull, no emotional buttons to press, no soft spots to exploit. You removed yourself from their control panel completely, and now they're stuck with something they hate: irrelevance. You didn't need their explanation to heal. You didn't need their apology to grow. You didn't need their presence to move on. You just closed the chapter yourself. And nothing scares a manipulator more than realizing they no longer matter enough to be chased. Number 10. Your glow-up feels like an accusation. It's not your fault, and you didn't do it on purpose, but every time they see you thriving, every time they notice your confidence, your peace, or your success, it hits them like a quiet accusation. Not because you're bragging or showing off. It's simply that you exist in a way that reminds them of everything they failed to do and everything they tried to destroy. They're forced to watch someone they thought they controlled rise above it all. Every smile, every achievement, every calm decision screams, "I didn't need you. I survived without you. I outgrew what you tried to trap me in." That realization is humiliating. It's sharper than any insult because it's true. They can't argue with it. They can't gaslight you into looking like the problem. You're living proof that all their effort, all their schemes, all their chaos was wasted. And here's the thing, they hate that it's effortless. You didn't have to fight them publicly. You didn't have to seek revenge. You didn't have to prove anything. You simply kept moving forward, and your life itself became a statement. That effortless evolution is unbearable for them. It's like a quiet spotlight on their incompetence, illuminating the ways they sabotaged themselves while trying to sabotage you. They start comparing themselves to you, even subconsciously. Every mistake they made, every lie, every cutthroat move they took suddenly feels heavier. Every opportunity they passed up, every relationship they mishandled, every betrayal they thought was invisible is highlighted by your success. Their ego can't handle it, so resentment grows quietly underneath the surface. The cruel irony is that your life doesn't even have to be perfect. It just has to be moving in a direction they can't touch. Because their fear isn't about your achievements. It's about the truth embedded in them, that all the chaos they caused was useless against your growth. And nothing is more uncomfortable for someone who thrives on control than seeing the person they tried to break not just survive, but thrive in a way that exposes their failure without you ever saying a single word. Number 11, they recognize that you see through them now. One of the things that unsettles them the most is that you no longer operate in the fog they created. Before, you doubted yourself. Before, you trusted them even when your gut whispered otherwise. Before, you explained, excused, and justified their behavior in your own mind just to make sense of it all. They counted on that. They thrived on the fact that you were accessible, predictable, and still trying to figure out whether they were right or wrong. Now, all of that has changed. You watch people closely. You read intentions before words are even spoken. You notice patterns that would have gone over your head before. You don't react blindly. You observe, evaluate, and make choices based on what you see, not what they say. They recognize this shift immediately, even if they act like nothing is different. They notice how you no longer fall for their traps, how you no longer scramble to fix things that aren't yours to fix, how you no longer give explanations that they don't deserve. This awareness terrifies them because it cuts off their primary weapon, deception. They can't manipulate someone who knows their tactics. They can't intimidate someone who already understands the patterns of manipulation. They can't destabilize someone who has learned to detach emotionally from their chaos. Every attempt to control, gaslight, or influence you is met with clarity instead of confusion. That makes them frustrated, powerless, and uncomfortably aware of their own limitations. They also see that your intuition is sharper now. You trust it without hesitation. They notice how quickly you pick up on lies, half-truths, and hidden motives. They see that the careful web of manipulation they spun over months or years no longer exists for you. That invisibility they assumed you were trapped in is gone, and that's what scares them the most. They can't hide anything from you anymore. They can't regain control because you aren't a puzzle to solve. You are fully awake, fully aware, and fully untouchable in the ways that matter. They can see the change, and it makes them small because you're no longer their target. You're their mirror, and mirrors don't lie. Number 12, they know karma doesn't need you to retaliate. One of the hardest truths for them to swallow is that they don't control the consequences of their actions anymore. They tried to manipulate, sabotage, and throw chaos your way, thinking it would give them power. They imagined you would crumble, struggle, or retaliate. That's how they measured their influence. They assumed the fallout depended on you reacting the way they expected. But the reality is far more unsettling for them. You don't need to retaliate, argue, or expose them for life to remind them what they did. Life has a way of delivering balance on its own, and it doesn't need your cooperation. Their relationships stumble, their reputation cracks, their schemes unravel. The very energy they put out, the lies, the manipulation, the cruelty, comes back in ways they can't control. And while they look at you, standing calm and steady, they can see the contrast in real time. You became a living example of what they didn't account for. You didn't have to fight back for life to correct itself. Your progress, your independence, your peace, all of it happens outside their influence, silently highlighting the gap between what they thought they could control and what they never could. They start noticing patterns they ignored in others' lives. Small failures accumulate. Opportunities slip through their fingers. People who once supported them quietly distance themselves. And all of this happens without you lifting a finger. They realize you are untouchable, not because you're plotting or scheming, but because you don't rely on them to validate your worth or to dictate your outcomes. Your presence itself, thriving despite their chaos, is a reminder of their failure. And that reminder doesn't fade. It's quiet, persistent, and undeniable. The worst part for them is that they can't blame you for it. You didn't plan it. You didn't expose them. You didn't make anyone else see the truth. You just moved forward. And in that forward motion, without revenge or theatrics, you've become the proof that life corrects itself, and they can't escape it. Nothing they do can erase the fact that their own actions are catching up, while you remain unscathed, calm, and rising. Number 13, you stop trying to prove your innocence. One of the things that rattles them more than anything is that you no longer feel the need to defend yourself. They expect you to argue, explain, justify, and constantly validate your side of the story. That's how they maintain control, by keeping you in a state of explanation, making you chase the narrative they want to enforce. They assume you'll feel compelled to convince the world, or even just them, that you're not at fault. But you stopped. You stopped trying to convince anyone, and that change is devastating for them. When a manipulator can no longer provoke an argument, they lose their primary weapon. They lose the sense of dominance they get from seeing you squirm, rationalize, or over-explain. You're calm, unbothered, and unwavering because you know the truth, and you don't need anyone else to validate it. This silence, this refusal to justify yourself, is more powerful than confrontation. It removes the drama they depend on. There's no fuel for gossip, no ammunition for distortion, no leverage for manipulation. You exist outside their control now, and they can't touch that. Every moment you refuse to prove yourself quietly erases their relevance in your life. They become spectators, not players, and that's a position they hate. It also exposes them in ways they can't spin. When you stop defending yourself, their attempts to paint you as the villain become more obvious. Without your reactions, their lies and manipulations are naked. They can't hide behind your overreactions or confusion because you aren't giving them anything to hide behind. Their chaos, once effective, now only highlights their failure and their moral bankruptcy. The fact that you act as if nothing needs defending scares them because it's a reminder of your power. They thought you would need them to explain yourself. They thought your voice would always depend on their validation. But by stepping out of that cycle, you become untouchable. You don't need their approval. You don't need their acknowledgement. You don't need their recognition. And that alone makes them small, unsettled, and constantly aware that they've lost control completely. Number 14, the scariest part for them. You're not angry anymore. Anger is easy to handle. It's loud, visible, and predictable. Most people can push back against it, argue with it, or dismiss it as emotion. It's the kind of energy that allows manipulators to feel in control. They can provoke it, twist it, and even use it as evidence that you're overreacting. But calm indifference? That's something they were never prepared for. When you stop being angry, when you stop letting their actions dictate your emotional state, they realize something terrifying. You no longer need them. You're not invested in their approval, their recognition, or even their acknowledgement of what they did. Your life moves forward without them, unshaken, unbothered, and unbound. That absence of reaction strips them of control. It leaves them exposed in ways that rage or drama never could. They expected a fight, tears, or chaos. They expected resistance. They counted on you needing something from them, closure, validation, revenge. But now none of that exists. Your calm presence is a constant, undeniable reminder that everything they tried to manipulate, every lie, every betrayal, and every scheme they engineered had zero lasting impact on the most important thing, you. And here's the cruelest part for them. They can't provoke this indifference. They can't gaslight it. They can't twist it into something else. You simply don't care in the way they hoped you would. That makes them frantic. It makes them small. Every glance, every mention of your name, every acknowledgement of your existence is a reminder that their chaos was wasted, that their control is gone, and that their relevance in your life has evaporated. Your lack of anger doesn't just protect you, it punishes them quietly, invisibly, and more efficiently than any confrontation ever could. Because it forces them to face the ultimate truth. They failed, not because you fought back, not because the world corrected them, but because you refused to let them have any power over your peace. You're calm, you're rising, and they are powerless to touch it. That is the most terrifying thing of all. The truth is, the chaos they tried to throw at you, the manipulation, the lies, the petty attacks, they all backfired. Every moment they thought they had you cornered, every scheme they planned in secret, every calculated move meant to break you, only forged a stronger, sharper, and more unstoppable version of yourself. You didn't just survive. You became a living testament to resilience, independence, and clarity. You became someone who moves through life with calm precision, while they scramble, watch, and question how it all went so wrong. They feared your anger, your pain, your struggle. What they didn't expect, what they never imagined, was that you would rise above it with intelligence and composure. Your calm exposes their lies. Your survival dismantles their control. Your independence removes their leverage. Your memory keeps them accountable when they hoped you'd forget. Your growth, your peace, your quiet success. These are the real punishments, the evidence that their chaos never had power over you, and now they live in quiet terror, not because of what you did, but because of who you became without them, beyond them, and above them. You're untouchable in ways they will never understand, and that truth gnaws at their ego, their pride, and their sense of control every single day. You don't need revenge. You don't need proof. You don't need them to admit a thing. Your life itself has rewritten the story, and you've emerged not as a victim, but as someone impossible to manipulate, impossible to break, and impossible to ignore. This is the power of survival, clarity, and quiet strength. This is what happens when someone refuses to play by the rules designed to trap them, when they refuse to hand their power over, and when they simply rise above the chaos with dignity, precision, and relentless focus. And that is a presence they will never forget, a shadow that will silently haunt them for the rest of their lives. If this video resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more content that exposes the truth and empowers you to rise above any chaos thrown your way. Like this video if it hit hard, comment below your experiences or thoughts, and share it with someone who needs to see this. Your support helps spread these truths far and wide, and together we rise above the chaos. Stay awakened, chosen ones.